Well, one aspect of interpreting the parables is you really do need to get into the cultural background of that. So I had mentioned the parable of the Good Samaritan. And as I said, we think about the Samaritan as this good, helpful person, but we have to realize that, in the context of Jesus is talking to a lawyer here, in this. And to a lawyer, to a typical Jew, the Samaritan is someone who is, hated and despised. They're someone who is not a good Jew. The Samaritans are people who are mixed race. They intermarried. They were seen as not keeping the law, and so for Jesus to make the Samaritan the hero of the parable is something that's really sort of confrontational to the lawyer. So the lawyer asks this question and he says, who is my neighbor? And, Jesus sort of answers by telling him this parable of the Good Samaritan. And what happens is, the first person that comes by to, supposedly help the man on the side of the road is the priest. And the lawyer would naturally look at that and say, oh, of course the priest is going to help because the priest is the one who instructs in the law, but the priest is the one who passes him by. And the next person who comes by is the Levite. And then the lawyer would think, oh, of course the Levite is going to help him because the Levite is another religious leader, but the Levite also passes him by. And then the third person who comes by is a Samaritan. And this hated Samaritan, the one who supposedly doesn't keep the law, is the one who stops and helps the person. And so the lawyer is just going to be shocked and offended by this. And you even see that, in the end when Jesus says, who is the one who was the neighbor to the person? And the lawyer doesn't even say the Samaritan, he just says the one who showed him mercy. And so part of what it does, it just sort of confronts the lawyer in terms of realizing that, he doesn't want to see the Samaritan as his neighbor. But the other aspect of also interpreting the parables is a lot of it is really lost. A lot of the impact is lost to us because we don't really have the same kind of reaction to the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan as a lawyer would have. So one of the things that we do when we interpret the parables, if we really want to get the impact, is we can think about it if we were to interpret it in our own context. So for example, if we rewrote the parable in our own context, and so the man is standing on the side of the road, he's been beaten, and along comes, the pastor of the megachurch. And of course the pastor of the megachurch is going to help him, right? But no, the pastor of the megachurch passes him by. Maybe he has to give a sermon on mercy, so he doesn't have time to help him. And then so later comes along, the Bible professor, right? But the Bible professor, she doesn't have time to help him. She's about to go give a lecture on grace. And so she doesn't go by, but you would think, the people that you expect to stop by, they're not stopping by. But then look who comes later. Like, who would be someone that we don't expect to stop? Or we'd really have a hard time expecting that they would be the ones who would be merciful. So what if the person who stops and helps is the atheist, or the terrorist, or the sexual predator? And then you sort of ask, so who's the one who actually was the neighbor? And when we get those, when we put in our modern context, we sort of see the kind of reaction, and we begin to sort of notice maybe some of our own prejudices and reactions and who we don't want to see as a neighbor. So that becomes kind of a key aspect in the parables in terms of, thinking about how are we supposed to respond to them.